I love a good nap. Do you know most people sleep over 230,000 hours during their lifetime? That's a third of their life. 26 years of an average human's lifetime they spend sleeping.
That's right, Brian. 230,000 hours is a lot of time. I mean, a third of my life? That's crazy. That's a lot of time I could be doing other things.
Now, sleep actually serves a lot of purposes. Like I said, I love naps. Some people sleep 8 hours a day. There are tons of sleep disorders.
But we don't just go to sleep and then wake up. There's actually this really complex process going on while we're sleeping.
There are so many things about sleep that we don't know, and guess what? We're going to find out.
So on this episode of the Insomnicat Show, we're going to talk to experts, dream experts, brain experts, and sleep experts who are going to talk to us about what's really going on in our mind, in our bodies, in our brains, in our subconscious even. We're going to talk about all of it. So dive into this episode. Rocky's ready, and don't fall asleep.
So I had a rough night sleep last night.
Yeah, me too. How come?
No, really, I had a really bad
No, I did too. Me too. Yeah, I did.
Well, I've been dealing with snoring in the house.
Mm-hmm.
I've been dealing with my son waking up in the middle of the night. He's 7. And the dog also has been like just not getting settled. So I don't think I've slept. I don't think I've slept through the. When was the last time you slept through the night?
Oh man, recently, not that often. Between the two dogs, between Dawn, between the kids waking up, at 3 a.m., between having to get up at 6 a.m. and not being a person who goes to bed until 2, 3 a.m. Yeah, I don't really know when the last time I really slept through the night was. I think probably, actually, when I slept through the night last time? When I had COVID. Like I probably slept through the night, like one night where I was really tired. There was one day I was sort of tired, and that was about it. I don't really remember.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, thank you, COVID, for a good night's
one
sleep.
night's sleep, right?
Yeah, but I mean, my patterns are a little bit different, right? Like I only sleep. I go to bed usually like between, I'd say early is like 1:30. Usually like 2:30, and depending on the day, some days I'm up at 6, other days I'm up at 7, just depending on the day. But I always take like a little power nap after work. So does that make sense? Like usually around like 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'll take like a 10 or 15 minute nap.
Oh, that's nice.
Like it sort of recharges my brain, but that's what I feel naps are for. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't slept. I don't know. I think maybe I can count in 7 years how many times I've slept through the night on 2 hands. I in 7 years. So that's.
Well, all parents definitely sleep with one eye open. Let's be honest. Or the phrase "one eye open," like you're always like listening for noises. Did my kid get out of bed? Did they? And then they get better when they're in junior high when they're not really out, and then all of a sudden you're listening for them again when they're in high school coming in the house or leaving the house, right? So I think until your kids are fully out of your house, you're probably like always sleeping with one eye open.
Well, it sucks though because I need sleep. I feel like I really need sleep, and I used to go to bed really early. Well, I guess
you went to bed at like 5 o'clock, right? No, I'm joking.
All right, I used to go to bed early
before dinner. You went to bed.
Yeah, that was me. I used to go to bed early, and I used to be up early though. I like to wake up 4:30, 5 o'clock. I like to do work when nobody was up. I felt like that was my thing. And then, obviously routines have shifted, COVID, moving, things like that. But yeah, I mean, some days I just wish we didn't need sleep.
That's the theory I go by. I've always been one of those people, I'll sleep when I'm dead. So I try to minimize my sleep to what I actually need versus going, I'm going to go sleep. Some people like 8 hours a day or whatever. I don't know. I feel like you're spending so much of your time sleeping that to sleep 8 hours when my body at least doesn't need. I'm not saying I guess there are many people who need 8 hours or 10 hours or something like that, but I just can't imagine sleeping 8 hours a day. Like I just can't imagine that. That's like, to me, that's sort of like crazy. It's like wasting time. If you had your choice right? Like, no, you got to choose. No interruption from kids, no sleeping with one eye open. What would your sleep pattern actually look like? Or what do you think it would look like?
I used to sleep pretty late, actually, until I met my husband. I used to sleep pretty late. And then when we moved in together, he was waking up about 4:30 to go to work. And on the weekends, he would naturally just get up early. And so he would wake me up early and say, why are you sleeping? You're wasting the day. You're wasting the day. And I kind of got into this pattern of waking up earlier because I realized, well, look at all this day I have now.
Right, but do you have to go to bed earlier to do that?
I was pretty much just being a bum. I was sleeping late for no reason. I wasn't really tired. I just had nothing else to do.
So you were still going to bed at the same time? You were still going to bed at the same time? So
yeah, we were still going to bed at like 11:30, like that, 11:30.
But when he was getting up at 4:00 in the morning, he was going to bed at 11:30? 10? Okay.
10, that was before kids. So we weren't really tired from much. You go to bed at 10, you wake up at 4:30, that's 6.5 hours. You're fine. You're not waking up all night, like
you're good.
You're fine.
Yeah. I sort of think back like when I was like, in college, right? And I had no real responsibilities, and my schedule was my schedule. So I would sleep like twice a day in these two little 3-hour like spans. Like one was from like 4:00 in the morning to like 6. And the other one was from like, say, 4:00 in the afternoon to like 6-7 o'clock. And that was my pattern. And I felt so good, just sleeping twice a day in these little short bursts. And that's what my body naturally tends to do, because my body will be up I love staying up all night. I remember my warning was like the seagulls starting to make noise was like, oh crap, I got to go to bed, because that means it was daybreak a lot of times.
So then why do we actually need to sleep?
There's still a debate about why we sleep. I mean, we spend a third of our lives sleeping, but nobody really knows why we do it. We know that if you don't do it, you suffer. But why is that? I mean, if you didn't sleep, couldn't you get so much more done in a day? Why do we spend a third of our lives sleeping? And why do all animals sleep? It seems to be something that's done for all animals, have a period of rest. Why? What does it mean to be conscious versus unconscious? I mean, we know that we're conscious, but how our brain generates consciousness. And there are some people that believe that the brain does not generate consciousness. How does the brain do it? And if the brain doesn't do it, how does consciousness result?
All right. So there's this theory called the inactivity theory. Now, I know, Brian, you're not a big fan of this one, but the theory basically says, and I'm obviously summing this up into some, digestible way, that this is kind of an evolutionary thing, sleep, that, animals were not in danger when they were sleeping through the night, right? So they didn't have accidents and, they weren't being killed by predators. Right. And it was kind of this survival function.
The reason why I'm not a fan of this is because basically there are a lot of animals that are actually designed to be up at night. I mean, there's even animals that are designed to be up multiple times during the day. So I get that, for animals that necessarily may not have good eyesight, they're avoiding accidents, but animals who hunt during the night, the theory only explains part of the equation, of basically why we sleep. The next theory is energy conservation. Okay. Now, this is basically saying that we could only gain so many calories during the day. We only have so much energy we could expend, and we need rest time in order to basically have enough energy to complete whatever we're trying to complete on a daily basis.
All right. I mean, that makes sense in a way, we are using energy throughout the day.
And if you were active 24/7, you would need to burn a lot more calories. You would burn a lot more calories.
Right.
Even mentally, people don't realize that even mental energy, you're actually burning a lot of calories.
So then there's this other theory, the restorative theory, which I mean, kind of goes hand in hand with energy conservation in a way. Like you have to restore what's been lost in the body during the day while you're awake, right? So you need to repair and rejuvenate. And I am a big I'm a big fan of this theory because I truly believe in what I tell everyone, my son and everyone, if you're sick, like the only way for your body to heal itself right now is for you to rest. Like you need to sleep. You need to let your body heal itself and fix itself. So restorative, I'm kind of behind that theory.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when your body is at rest, it does give it a chance to heal. I mean, you could even look at it as something as simple as like a broken bone, right? If you're not resting, the bone's never going to heal. If you're trying to walk on it or use it or whatever the case is, you're going to make it a lot harder for your body. And, once again, you only have so much energy, right? If it's either your body needs the energy to heal itself or it needs that energy to say, keep moving, whatever that case is. And, if you're resting, it's using that energy that you've stored to heal itself.
All right, Brian. So do you want to talk a little bit about the brain plasticity theory?
Yeah, actually what's really cool about this is basically it takes into account the brain structure, right? So what's really cool is as we go through those different phases of dreaming, being awake, it takes all that into account. Now we could talk about reality and what dreams are and things like that, and even how that connects to this. But really one of the cool things is with this theory, the brain actually, there's tons of studies that show the brain actually flushes out like all the stuff that's in it during the day, the chemicals and things like that build up. So what happens is when your brain's at rest, it sort of resets in many ways. I mean, that's why usually like even I know for myself, if I'm like in a cranky mood and I go take a nap and I wake up, I'm like back to normal. I've almost like reset or whatever the case is, so whatever that happens in that time where the brain is asleep, it's sort of recharging itself, whether it's the fact that it's going through those stages, it's falling in, into your REM sleep or whatever the case is, but it gives it a chance to really reset. And I think that's really important.
So there's one other thing that's not mentioned in here, and I think you might agree with me on this. I think sleep allows you to process, right? And we know, and we're going to talk a little bit later about dreams and how we process things that, from our day. But I think that, you ever go to sleep and you're like, I can't figure this out right now, but let me just sleep on it, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of wake up and it makes sense, right? Like it's too much for your brain for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's sitting in your subconscious, is being processed. I mean, that's, and it's no different if people don't believe that, it's no different than when you're in the shower and you're sort of zoned out, and all of a sudden like an answer comes to you that you've been thinking about, or all of a sudden you come to a conclusion on something, so it gives your brain that time to subconsciously process things, be in a state where you're not worried about like, is my child crying? Do I need to feed the dog? I got, 8 loads of laundry to wash or whatever's going on in your life. When the brain is sort of at rest like that, what happens is it processes at a very, very different level.
So overall, I think it's safe to say that sleep, for whatever reason, is pretty important to our basic functioning.
Yes, sleep is essential for coordinating all of the things that we've learned the day before, so that it helps with our memory, it helps rejuvenate us mentally and physically.
So we know that getting the right amount of sleep has got loads of health implications, not only in the fact that if you sleep enough, you have a reduced risk of certain types of cancer and dementia, obesity, heart disease, but also depression and anxiety are linked to poor sleep. So if you are not sleeping enough, you're much more likely to be depressed and anxious than if you're getting enough sleep. Also, if you are feeling depressed or you're feeling very anxious, then it's very likely that your sleep's going to start to go wrong. So, sleep and mood really do go hand in hand.
All right. So we know that sleep is important, right? The experts have just told us that sleep is incredibly important. My question is, what's happening in our brain, right? I know we're processing, I know we're repairing or whatever it might be, but what's really going on in there?
So one of the things that researchers have found, they think that this cerebral spinal fluid actually flushes out sort of like all the waste and in our brains when we sleep. So they show that fluid actually, along with your blood, actually cleanses all the toxic waste out of your brain, which helps it sort of reset.
Your EEG, your electrical activity of your brain while you're sleeping, is much different. Well, it's different in some ways, in that when we sleep, we go through different stages of sleep throughout the night. And it starts off, your EEG looks similar before you fall asleep, looks similar to when you're awake. And as you go through different stages of different depths of sleep, your EEG does change. And in fact, when we dream, our EEG looks very similar as if we were awake. But even though our EEG looks similar to when we're awake, our muscles are paralyzed. So there's parts of our brain that are sending information down to our skeletal muscles so that we don't move and that we don't act out our dreams. So different parts of our brain are active or inactive during sleep compared to when we're awake.
So basically our brain is pretty active when we're sleeping. I mean, that's what I just took away from that between, what you were talking about, flushing toxins and, the dreaming and how our brain, right. It looks awake.
Right. Subconscious processing of things, and it's interesting we're talking about that, because the brain being flushed out, right? And now we're talking about figuring out things from a subconscious level that maybe you couldn't process. I wonder if that flushing out the toxins helps you see a little bit clearer.
Maybe. All right. So we know that our brain is active, right? And we kind of knew that already because we know that there's these different stages of sleep, whether, we knew about the brain activity and an EEG or not. We know that there are these 4 stages of sleep.
Yeah. So we have the 4 stages, and 3 of the 4 stages are non-REM sleep, right? So you have stage 1 of non-REM sleep, which is usually about 1 to 5 minutes. Stage 2 is 10 to 60 minutes. Stage 3 of non-REM sleep is basically where you go into that delta sleep or you start into that deep sleep. And what happens is that goes on for about 20 to 40 minutes before you hit that REM sleep. And REM, if you don't recall, is rapid eye movement, where your eyes sort of fluttering around while you're sleeping. And REM sleep actually takes place for about 10 to 60 minutes. And that's where we have that really deep dreaming part of our sleep experience.
And so we spend most of our time in that deep sleep during the first half of the night. And then, they kind of get shorter after that, and more time will start to get spent in that REM sleep. And that's where you're having those dreams, right?
Yeah.
So did you ever notice, I don't know if this is the case for you, but I find that my dreams are happening very late in the night, almost toward the morning, like right before I wake up. So that's kind of why that's happening. That REM is happening toward the end of the night.
And I think what happens too is, right, it cycles. So I think even once you go into REM, right, you're sort of remembering the one in the morning because you're sort of coming awake. But I think you do cycle through REM depending on how long you sleep multiple times, because it does take about 90 minutes for most people, once they're asleep, to actually get into REM sleep, and I mean, so it really depends on and how, and if I recall, right, REM really depends on how consistent your sleep is. So it's not even about 8 hours. It's about am I consistently sleeping the same amount, all the time? And I think that's what gets us closer to REM. But I think we all feel like we dream more near morning because we have a tendency to wake up and we remember that last dream, or that last dream even sometimes is the thing that wakes us up.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
No, I mean, just speaking of the EEG during REM sleep, this is when the brain activity is going to pick up. So you're going to see, on a scan, it's going to look almost like you're awake, but as we learned earlier, there's a lot of paralysis going on in your muscles, right? Except for, like you were talking about, your eyes, moving, and you've got to breathe. So that's what's happening there during that REM sleep.
Right. And let's be honest too, part of the reason why your muscles are, have paralysis is, think about it. You don't want to start flailing around, if you're having some dream, and some people do, don't get me wrong, but where you're smacking, whoever's sleeping with you in the middle of the night because you're uncontrollably, moving around. So that's why you go into that partial paralysis. Honestly, it's self-preservation also, not just hurting someone else, but also hurting yourself in the middle of the night, right? Think about it. You're a caveman sleeping in a cave. All of a sudden you fling your arm, you're going to break your arm on a rock. You know what I mean? That's because you flung your arm too hard or whatever the case is, right? So.
All right. So we talked about, depending on how much you sleep, and everybody's different, right? I mean, if you look generally speaking, REM stages are going to make up around 25% of an adult sleep. But there are different things that affect how much you can sleep and your sleep cycles, right? There are probably some, maybe 3 or 4 big ones.
Age plays a huge factor in this. For instance, think about how much newborns sleep. They sleep probably 50% of the time. I always felt like as a parent, like you're so deceived by like your first child. You're like, wow, this kid sleeps a lot, right? When they're newborns, and then over a sudden they hit 3-4 months and they're sleeping less and less and less. So age definitely becomes, a factor. Even when you get older, people require less and less sleep as they get older. I know my grandfather, when he was in his 90s, he was only sleeping between an hour and 2 hours a night. And he felt completely fine, because his body required much less sleep during the night.
And what's funny is that it's really that REM sleep that people are getting less of. So like babies are getting way more of that REM, whereas elderly people are getting less of it, which is kind of crazy because that's where, I don't know. Why does that
happen? What are you dreaming about as a newborn, right? But it can also be the brain developing, and because there's a lot of brain development going on, with infants and newborns, whereas for adults or as people get older, it's probably less development going on. So because we know the elasticity of the brain starts, it loses elasticity as you get older.
Right. And then there's obviously factors like, if your sleep has been kind of disrupted recently, right? I know a lot of people during COVID had some sleep disruptions because their patterns were changing. They were home more. If you were injured, there's a ton of things. I mean, anything can contribute to an abnormal sleep cycle. Even when I moved, I'm still trying to figure out a normal sleep cycle, and that's been 9 months. So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know the other thing that happens is too, a lot of times alcohol decreases the amount of time you need to sleep. I mean, unless you're like so messed up and you're like hungover, then some people just need to sleep because they're hurt. But a lot of times too, what happens is you wake up. A lot of times when people drink, they don't realize this. They wake up, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of energy after they've been drinking. And what happens is actually your body kicking in to try to counteract being intoxicated. So, what happens is there's actually a story of one of, and I don't know who it is, we'll look it up. He's like one of those like crazy, insane marathon runners, but one of those ones that do like those extreme ones, like 80 miles an hour, 80-mile races. Yeah, no, there are people that run 80 miles, and basically the guy was out drinking, and he didn't even realize he could run this far, and he woke up and he basically ran. Like, he figured his body was just so full of energy from running that he just ran and ran and ran that day. And then he just started building on it. Ironman runs. They're Ironman runs. They do them in like Hawaii and stuff like that. But yeah, there's some pretty crazy stories about people waking up after having, drinking. And basically, because their body kicks in, and I don't know what the chemicals are, but all the things their body kicks in to counteract actually being intoxicated. So,
and then, of course, there's sleep disorders, which are going to disrupt your sleep patterns, your, run-of-the-mill sleep apnea, insomnia. I was going to say Insomnicat. Insomnia, restless leg syndrome, anything like that will also interrupt your sleep cycles.
Yeah. You know what always interrupts my sleep cycle?
The dog?
No, well, yeah, that too, but the sun or light. Like, if it is light, I have a hard time sleeping. So when like
external factors, right?
Yeah, like when the sun, honestly, when the sun comes up, or if someone turns on a light, that is one thing that will wake me up.
All right. So, we've talked about how normal sleep patterns are going to go, right? So we know there's those 4 stages. We've talked about some, factors that might disrupt those stages. But, one thing we mentioned was insomnia, not Insomnicat, right? And according to the Cleveland Clinic, sleep disorders actually affect up to 7 million Americans each year. And insomnia is it's pretty high up there, right? 33 to 50% of the adult population is suffering from this.
Which is crazy if you think about it. You know, that's a lot of people that are suffering from, and that's America, but that's still a crazy amount of people that have insomnia.
Yeah.
You know?
And just to kind of define insomnia so that the audience knows, right? This is, it's defined as the persistent problem of falling and staying asleep. Now, Brian, you mentioned the light, right? You mentioned light being a factor. So, what else makes it hard for you personally to fall asleep during the day? Is there anything in particular
during the day?
I'm sorry.
Night?
Well,
I wish I could sleep during the day.
Is there anything in particular that makes it hard for you to fall asleep at night?
I for me, it's light, is a huge thing. And I know for myself, I have to wind down, right? Because I'm a go person. So if I don't wind down and, go through my little, I don't want to say ritual, but I mean, I think everything's a ritual, in many ways, but like I have to calm down. I have to go like read or watch mindless TV or work on something that doesn't require a lot of thinking, honestly. Like I need my brain to cool down. But usually for me, I am definitely not of that 50% that have insomnia. Usually for me, I hit the bed and I'm asleep. Problem is usually my factors are like the dog, or do you know what I mean? Like, having no covers because, someone pulled the covers over, do you know what I mean? Or something like that. So, or the kids waking up. So from like sleeping with no interruptions is pretty easy for me. It's the interruptions that really cause my breaks in sleep pattern.
So I'd say for me, it's very easy to stay asleep once I'm asleep. I do feel that there are times where I have been more prone to insomnia than others. And it's not consistent. It seems to be when there's something going on in my life that is causing me a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. And my mind is constantly going and I'm up, I can't fall asleep because my heart, I'm having anxiety. I'm having panic attacks and things like that at night before bed. I drink a lot of coffee, but I can drink a cup of coffee and fall right to sleep. That doesn't affect me in that way.
It's interesting. You have those things plaguing you, before you go to bed, right? Like whatever those thoughts are. For me, I usually wake up from those. Like I usually wake up, like I don't have trouble going to bed, but I usually wake up because over a sudden, like I'm anxious about something or there's something that I need to be done. Like over a sudden my brain's like, okay, you need to kick in, or, you need to, like, if I have anxiety of something, right, over something. And, I'll wake up and go, oh man, like I'll start having anxiety, but it's in the morning. It's never before I go to bed.
It's also when I'm excited about something, like if I have some really cool ideas, right? And, they're maybe work related, or I want to keep jotting things down because my mind is just really excited. And when I get these bursts of energy, I kind of want to seize them because I don't often have a lot of energy. So when I have them, I take them and then I can't go to sleep because I'm so excited in a good way, in a positive way. So it's not always, the anxiety and the negative. It's also kind of being really alert from being excited about something that I'm working on or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't go to bed.
You're just really excited all the time, aren't you?
Well, because there's always something I want to accomplish, right? So I'm working on whatever it is. I'm working on a part of a book. I'm working on a project. Do you know what I mean? I'm doing research on something. I'm so into what I'm doing. That's why I just don't sleep. I honestly, if I could create another, 24 hours in a day, I would, So that's part of the problem, is because I'm always, on wanting to work on these things that just there's not enough time for. I wouldn't say that's anxiety, though. Excitement and anxiety are two different things.
No. Those are two different things. However, these things do contribute to insomnia. And I know
absolutely.
And when we spoke to the doctor about this, she had some things to say about what keeps us up at night.
Anything that makes you more alert stops you sleeping. And that could be excitement, that could be stimulants like caffeine, that could be stress, anxiety, anything where your body is more awake, it's going to stop you sleeping, basically. And we do things during the day that affect that. Like you could be watching a really exciting movie and then you're really awake. You might be doing work late at night and it might be quite stressful. And then when you switch your laptop off to go to sleep, your brain is still worrying because you're still anxious, you're still thinking about that work. That's going to keep you awake. But also physical things, like if you've just done a workout, sometimes you can struggle to cool down and go to sleep because your body is still physically quite alert and awake. And caffeine is a stimulant that keeps you awake. So basically, any time that your body and your brain are extra alert, it's harder to go to sleep. And the most common reason that people speak to me about having trouble with their sleep is if that's to do with stress. So generally when people are going through a difficult, stressful time, they're going to find it difficult to sleep because their body is on high alert, dealing with that stress.
All right. So, one of the things that I talked to Dr. Browning about while we were talking to her was kind of how I sleep with the TV on, right? Mm-hmm. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that, but other people struggle to fall asleep. Other people could fall asleep anywhere, right? I mean, my son likes to fall asleep in church and in the movie theater. Those are two places he has consistently fallen asleep over his 7 years.
I can understand the movie theater. It's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but it's loud.
Yeah.
And church is kind of boring. So, I mean, I get that, but especially when you're like 3, but I mean.
Yeah.
But there's singing going on, lights, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Have you ever fallen?
3, but 3 is young. You know what I'm saying? 3 is young. If he was 9 and falling asleep in church, I'd say, then I'd really question it.
So let me ask you a question. Have you ever fallen asleep anywhere crazy?
Well, I've slept in weird places, but one of the things I actually have an issue with is sort of sleeping in public. You know how people like sleep on a plane? Like I can't do that. Like I can't fall asleep. I mean, every once in a while I'll doze off for like, if it's a long flight. I've slept on planes like, I've been on flights that are 13, 14 hours straight, and those, yes, you're going to fall asleep on, right? For a few hours. But usually like a regular standard flight, if you're in the US and you're on a 3-hour flight, let's say, maybe I'll fall asleep for 15 minutes and but most of the time I'm not. So for me, like it's sleeping in public. That's a little bit weird. Like I don't really fall asleep too easily in public, but I have. I remember one time like being at the pool in our yard and like sleeping on the diving board. Do you know what I mean?
Were you drunk?
No.
I don't know if that counts. Okay.
No, I wasn't drunk.
All right. Just
like laying on the diving. But I guess that's no different than like laying on. I mean, I wasn't dangling over the pool. Don't get me wrong. But like laying on the diving board and falling asleep on the diving board. But I guess that's no different than like laying in a lounge chair and falling asleep.
Yeah, it's true.
So I don't know about super weird places. Besides like standard stuff.
All right. Well, there are some pretty funny police.
Whoa. You're going to get away from answering this? What about you?
Oh, me? No, I can't sleep in public. I've never fallen asleep anywhere outdoors or in public or never. I have to be in a certain position to sleep.
You don't sleep? Like if you go to the beach, you don't fall asleep?
No.
If you're at your pool, at your parents' house, you don't fall asleep? Nope. Sometimes in a lounge chair? I'll see. Like I'll fall asleep there.
No, I can't do it. I can't do it. The only place, if I have fallen asleep on a plane, maybe it's like 2 or 3 times in my life. And the only reason is because I was able to I was with Justin and I was able to lay down on his lap. Other than that, I can't.
Right. So it's maybe positional too, like sitting, sitting upright. See, it's hard to sleep sitting upright. It really is. We're not designed for it.
No, I can't do it.
Even your neck hurts, your back hurts, whatever. You don't get good sleep. It's just we're not designed for that position.
And I would like to. Don't get me wrong. Like I'd love to be able to fall asleep anywhere, a beach, a chair. I would love to. I just can't.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I'm not that fun.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, there are some people who are more fun. So let's take a look at some weird places that people have fallen asleep. All right. So I'll kick us off. I found this one on Reddit. Ready? User says, I fell asleep in the dentist chair during a checkup teeth cleaning. It was actually pretty painful. So I have no idea how I managed that.
Yeah, too much laughing gas maybe, or like I don't even know. Like yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been at the doctor's when the doctor's not in the room and like you're laying down on the thing and I've closed my eyes. I don't know if I fell asleep, but not while they were actually doing something to you, right? You know, it's pretty crazy. Here's another one from Reddit. Fell asleep sitting on a big speaker at a college frat party, surrounded by 100 or so people. I think they threw popcorn at me. No regrets. Okay. I'm not saying they were. Yeah, I'm not saying they were, but chances are some sort of alcohol or drug may have been involved. I'm just saying, you know, but hey, you know, or maybe they just want to tell a good story. Who knows?
All right, how about this one? I fell asleep at the Ohio State versus Michigan game one year. Right after Michigan scored a touchdown. Oh my gosh, it was a record crowd there. It was loud. Okay, I mean,
that is possibly, you know, there may have been some alcohol involved in that one too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, tailgating is a big thing at football games. So yeah. And then we have this guy that posted a picture of him sleeping on a cow. So he's at a farm, obviously, and the cow is laying down, and he's literally laying on the cow and sleeping on the cow. Now, I know my kids used to sleep on the dog. The dog would lay down and they would lay their heads on the dog, but a cow? I mean...
You better hope this cow doesn't fart. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I know the guy's a farmer and he probably doesn't smell too much better than the cow, but still, you know?
Okay, and probably the best one we're going to see all day is this guy chilling under the truck with a hammock.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't look like he's sleeping. He looks like he's actually like on his phone or reading a book or something. I don't know. He's doing something there.
Maybe he's going to fall asleep. I mean, why else would you put a hammock under your... For that matter, you could just put a lawn chair out. No? I mean, what is this?
Yeah. Well, maybe it's what he had, right? Because it looks like... Okay, so let's analyze this photo for a second. He's definitely on the side of the road. It is definitely a country road because look, it's a gravel side, so it's not even a runoff, you know. So maybe his truck broke down and he knows he has 4 hours till they come help him. The reason why I say his truck's broke down is look in the rearview mirror. There's a line of cars, so he looks like he's probably stuck in a traffic jam actually, or his truck is broken down in a traffic jam. Do you see that? There's like a line of cars running down that road, so it's not like you know, maybe this guy was in like, I don't know. I mean, it does look like a country road because the gravel on the side, but maybe this guy was stuck for like 8 hours in some traffic jam. And he's like, forget it, I'm just pulling over. I'm going to read me a book or whatever he's doing.
Yeah. No point in driving. I need a nap anyway, right?
Yeah, well, he's a long haul truck driver. Let's be honest. You know, those guys are used to actually sleeping in the back of their, you know, cabs. So I don't know. Maybe he went to some fresh air. Who knows? You know, good for him. I say good for this guy. Good for this guy.
Let's all be this guy.
Hey, let me tell you something. There's nothing like putting your hammock up and laying down your hammock and taking a little siesta.
Under your truck.
Under your truck. I mean, I tend to do it in my backyard. But hey, you know, if you want to do it under your truck, you know. And for those of you, before you say, those of you who haven't taken a nap in a hammock, you're missing something.
I've never taken a nap in a hammock.
You got to take a nap in a hammock.
All right. So as I mentioned, you know, I sleep with the television on. Brian, you would have a heart attack because you can't sleep with the light on. Now, I'm going to just say my parents thought that this was a great solution since I never slept for years and years, and they, you know, needed to sleep. So they thought that it would be a good idea from a very early age to put that television on for me. Let me watch Snoopy, and then every time the tape would end, they'd have to get up and, you know, rewind it, right? Because we didn't have streaming services. I was concerned because, you know, I'm now older, and I'm like, okay, is this unhealthy, right? I mean, I don't have to do it all the time anymore. Surprisingly, though, I can sleep without a television now, but I sleep better with the television. So my sleep, I can fall asleep easier. I can sleep deeper. I am just, you know, I can sleep better. Doesn't mean I can't sleep without the television. I have trained myself, just won't sleep as well. So I asked Dr. Browning about this.
The only situation where having like a TV on might be helpful is if there's even worse noise outside. Like if you're by a train station or by a fire station and there's really loud, disruptive noise, then having a TV on with maybe some soothing music or something might help to sort of minimize that. But just like sleeping with the light on, if you go to sleep listening to the television, then you're waking yourself up. As we fall asleep, our brain doesn't just switch off. We kind of go through different stages of falling asleep. Different parts of our brain switch off sequentially. And if you've got sound, then as you fall asleep a little bit, you might hear that sound and you'll wake up again. If you're used to falling asleep with television on, you're going to be used to doing that. My number one rules about sleep is if it's not broken, don't fix it. If you sleep fine with the TV on, carry on doing it. There's not a problem. But it wouldn't be something that I would recommend to somebody who's seeking to solve a sleeping problem.
Now let's talk about dreams.
So we spend a 12th of our life dreaming. It's a huge part. So if you live into your 80s, you'll have dreamed solidly for 7 years throughout your life. So it's a big, big part of your life.
That's a lot of time dreaming. That's a lot of time dreaming. Everyone has dreams. A lot of times we don't remember those dreams, sort of what we're talking about with REM. You dream multiple times a night, but that is a lot of time, a lot more time than I actually thought that we spend dreaming throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you a question. Is there any dream that stands out in your mind that you've had over your life?
Oh, Mike. Yeah, there's ones I remember really, really vividly. But I also had a lot of, like, when I was younger, I had like night terrors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of flying dreams also, so there's definitely some of the night terror ones, like, you definitely never forget. Like, they're just so vivid and so real. Like, you could have sworn they happened.
Wow.
And some of the flying dreams, like, they were very particular, and like, so I remember like details. I remember details of even trees that, as I felt like I was flying over them. I remember one, they were a bunch of pine trees and they were snow covered, and being able to see like the snow and stuff like that on them. So I remember some pretty detailed parts of dreams and some pretty crazy dreams over the years. How about yourself?
I don't remember too many. Only about a handful stand out. I'd say the one that stands out the most was about a year after my grandmother died. I felt sometimes I don't even think it was a dream because it was so real. It's hard to accept that it was a dream. And she walked up the stairs to my apartment, just like she had in the past. She walked right upstairs, and I kind of turned around and I was shocked, like, you're dead. What are you doing here? I was shocked. And after the initial shock, I just gave her this big, big hug, and I could feel her. I could smell her. I could, like, I really could. And she kind of reacted the way she'd react in normal life. Like, all right. She wasn't a super affectionate woman. She was just like, all right. And it was just so natural and so real. I was like, I can't believe you're here. I couldn't believe it.
The one weird one that I had was, it was my grandfather, and basically him telling me he was my grandfather. And I was like, I don't know if you're my grandpa. Right. And I was very questioning of it because he was young. And I don't remember I didn't know what my grandfather looked like when he was young, besides like a few pictures here and there. And he was very insistent on that he was my grandfather. It was sort of at the same time, it was a little creepy because I was like, I don't know if you're my grandpa. You know what I mean? I was questioning, but like, obviously when my dad, I came in my dreams, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, came to visit, or however you want to say it, or I dreamed about him, whichever your choice is there. Right. That I knew was my dad. So that was an interesting one. It's interesting you bring up your grandma coming to visit you.
Let's take a look at what's actually going on when you're dreaming.
It sounds like a really basic question, but it's a question that people have been asking for centuries now. And again, it used to be thought until 200 or 300 years ago that when you dream, somehow the spirits take over your body and you're like some big psychic receiver and you tune into the ether and the gods send you messages. But The reality is that's not a particularly good thesis or hypothesis at how dreams work and why we dream. And it's only very recently, in human terms, it's only maybe 25 years ago, in the mid-1990s, that neuroscientists started finding out that it was quite a revelation at the time. People always thought that dreams happened to them. You lie there like the psychic receiver and you receive all these messages, but the reality is quite opposite. Dreams don't happen to us. We happen to the dream, and we create everything we experience in the dream. Our brains generate all our dream imagery. And the reason that we create these dreams, we generate dreams, the fundamental function of dreaming is to process our emotions. And one of the other findings from the late 90s and early 2000s was that most of human consciousness is happening at an unconscious level. So the function of dreaming is to work through all those unconscious experiences that we absorb every day. Every human being does this. And as part of doing that, we process what is meaningful to us, emotionally meaningful to us. So we also use our dreams to consolidate short-term memory and short-term experiences into long-term life memory. And not just long-term life memory, but also long-term life expectations. So when we dream, we're actually creating a self-authored narrative of who we are, who we have been, and who we have yet to become.
So do you think we get messages from in our dreams, from outside of ourselves?
So it's actually the 20th most common dream, which is encountering a loved one who is no longer with us physically. But in a lot of ways, it's quite disingenuous because that's not what is really happening. So we said earlier that the dream doesn't happen to us. We happen to the dream, and we create everything in the dream. And we create all the characters in the dream. And we use the characters in the dream to represent aspects of our own character, our own characteristic qualities. And when we dream of a loved one who has passed away, what we're actually doing is we're engaging with the qualities that we really loved in that person, what they really meant to us. And usually we create that dream because there's a quality that we associate with that loved one that we may not exhibit ourselves in waking life, but we do have the opportunity to do that and show that. So it may be that your mother or grandmother was very caring and nurturing, or it may be that your father or grandfather was really intelligent or really good at working with people, was very good at socializing and making people feel at ease. And when you create that dream, it suggests that there's a situation in waking life where you have the opportunity to be caring or nurturing yourself, or more caring or more nurturing, or to put someone who's maybe feeling a bit awkward.
Right. It was interesting because the last time my dad, came to visit in a dream, or however, like I said, however you want to state it, basically I was on the side of a road and he was driving in this car he had when we were kids. Right. And basically he pulled up to me and he's like, look, and for whatever, I don't know, this was my dream. He's like, he's like, I forgot where he said he was going. He was going home. And he's like, but it's not your time to go. You're going to live a really long time. And he just kept going. And I was like, okay, I got it. You know what I mean? And I was like very upset that he didn't want me to come in the car, like go on this ride with him. But he's like, it's just not your time. And he just kept going. So for whatever that meant or whatever that message was, there it is. I took it as I'm going to live a really long time. So
not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing these days, but
I know, right?
I wish somebody would just come and give me the lotto numbers.
There's a phenomenon called precognitive dreaming. And that's where someone dreams of an event. And then that event happens sometime in the future. That has never really been proven. We tend to do that retrospectively. We fit our imagery to events that have happened. And it may be a similar sort of feeling or a similar sort of scenario, but it's not the specific event. And an example of that is the 16th most common dream is an airplane crashing. And every time the unfortunate event of an aircraft crashing happens somewhere in the world, I get people writing to me or messaging me and saying, oh, I dreamt that was going to happen. I had that dream. But the reality is that the dream of an aircraft crashing has nothing to do with an aircraft. It has quite a different symbolic significance.
So while maybe it doesn't predict the future, I think some of the symbols in our dreams probably are showing us the way. You know, we talked about subconscious processing of things, and a lot of times, you know, we see those symbols may mean something subconsciously. So I even though we're saying it doesn't really predict the future, maybe it is giving us, you know, part of the map for the current part of our journey, you know, to go on and help make some decisions.
Yeah, and actually we'll dive into some more dream symbols in another video, so be sure to check that out where we talk about some of the common dream symbols and what they mean. But in the meantime, you know, you talk about kind of getting that information, and what are we supposed to do with it all, right? You're saying, okay, maybe it provides us with some map and, you know, gives us something we need to know for where we are now, but all right, we're getting all this knowledge. What are we supposed to do with it all? Kind of live off of these dreams and take, you know, instruction from dreams?
Your dream is a very, very accurate reflection of who you are, what you need and what you believe. It's the ultimate self-portrait, or the ultimate selfie. And although we'd like to think that all our self-portraits are all those really lovely Insta-type ones with lots and lots of filters on where we look really glamorous, admittedly that'd be really difficult in my case, but that whole part of it where we have that false filtration around who we really are. But the way to be happiest in life is to understand who you really, really are, to know thyself. So when you work with your dreams, if you create a dream that's really, really scary and you're really worried and anxious in the dream, then what it's actually doing is showing in waking life that you have some really powerful emotions that you can channel and engage with and use them to make a change in your life that will be really positive and healthy for you. So the number one piece of advice is don't ignore your dreams. Don't be scared of them. Just actually engage with them and understand that we all have this.
All right. So, you know, we're not going to be scared of our dreams. However, you know, you talk about night terrors, which is something that you've experienced. I know my husband experiences it. My son experiences it. So here's my question to you. When you're in those terrors and you can kind of recall some of them, do you feel like you can control what's going on in there?
You know, I think night terrors are very different than your dreams. I think sometimes, I think like in our dreams, a lot of times you could sort of shift it. Like, I feel like sometimes you could shift it a little bit. Like you could be like, yeah, I don't like this. Let me go down a different path. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes it becomes a nightmare, right? That's where nightmares come from. But I feel like night terrors are so different. It's like such a different level of dreaming. And I don't know if it's the same for like me and your husband or your son. You know, I don't know the intensity of theirs versus the intent, like what's a nightmare versus a night terror. But it is so real. Your body's moving. I mean, there have been times where I've literally jumped out of bed and started moving. Like it was so real. Everything was so vivid. And if you ask me if those things really happened, like they are so intense that they are just as real as any experience that has happened to me in waking life, right? So those night terrors are just of such a different level that I don't even know if, I don't think with night terrors, I don't think you can control them, where I feel like with other dreaming states you can, because with night terrors, it feels so real. It's like trying to control all the elements around you in your day-to-day life, right? Or is something happening in a split second, like you're trying to control the wind, the water, the rocks, it'd be like trying to control that in a night terror. That's how real it is versus a dream. You know, so I think for me personally, and I'm sure there's a lot of different experiences out there, they're so real and they are so scary because they're terrors. They're not just they felt like they were really real and they were nice experiences. They're so real and they're such nightmares that I don't think I could control them while they're going on. Maybe there are other people that feel they could, but I don't think I could.
Yeah, well, there's a fundamental power that we all have, which is we are actually generating the dreams. So you are the author of your dreams, even though they seem to happen to you, and you may seem to have no control or choice in them. And that's one of the reasons that people tend to think that dreams happen to them. And there are a number of ways to engage more powerfully with your dreams, these dreams that you're authoring. But the reality is you can't really completely control your dreams, but you can make choices in them. And those choices that you make in your dreams can be very healthy and very beneficial for you.
So what's interesting is a lot of times where we feel very like connected and we come up with really great ideas, or we feel like we solve problems, is in that flow state. And that's like that moment right before you fall asleep. Were you ever laying there in bed and all of a sudden something comes to you? It's where you almost zone. Like a lot of athletes feel this when they're about to compete. They go into the zone where they're so focused on whatever's happening that they're able to perform. And going into a flow state, even with dreaming, is sort of the same thing. Most people experience that right before they go to sleep. That's when you jump up and then you're like, let me write this down, right? This thought that you have, because all of a sudden your brain is so relaxed. You're only focusing on one thing. You're not focusing on all the other things around you. That what happens is you become very connected to whatever it is you're trying to solve, let's say, or a thought, or whatever's trying to be accomplished. And what happens is that flow state kicks right in. And I mean, I think everyone goes through flow states, really simple. People talk about shower thoughts, right? They're in the shower and they come to some conclusion. It's sort of like that same concept, but some people are just better able to go in and out of it with training. And this is why I point to athletes, because a lot of athletes can do that, but it works very much the same in terms of when you're falling asleep and dreaming.
Usually when you're doing something, there is a boundary, there's a membrane between the conscious and the unconscious experience. And in the flow state, that membrane becomes far more porous. So you feel that there is no boundary between you and what you're doing. And that's exactly what happens in a lucid dream or in a hypnotic state.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to leave users with was kind of, some tips for sleeping better. I mean, everybody thinks, oh yeah, basic stuff, but why don't we take a look at, what can we actually do to sleep better at night?
If people say, when I lie down to go to sleep, my brain is just whirring and active. Often that's because it's the first time you've had to yourself in silence all day. If you're busy, especially if you're going through a difficult, stressful time where you've got kids, you've got a job, you're just going 100 miles an hour through the day, busy, 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 busy. And then when you lie down, turn the lights off, that's the first time you've had a moment to think. And of course, at that point, your brain just filled with all these to-do lists and stresses. So the number one way to help you sleep at night is to deal with those stresses earlier on during the day. Because if you just ignore them, they are going to hit you when you're trying to go to sleep. You want to minimize any distractions that are going to make you more alert. So making sure that you've got dark curtains so that you're not being distracted by the light, which is going to make your brain think, oh, it's morning, I can see light. Noise, if you've got rubbishy windows and you live somewhere really noisy, that's going to not be great for your sleep. Making sure that you've got a good mattress so that your physical sleeping environment is relaxing and comfortable, and having a bit of a wind down time before bed, which is one of the hardest things to do. If you're going through a stressful time in life, you don't have enough time. That's the whole point. That's why you're so stressed. So carving out half an hour to an hour before you go to bed to just read a nice book or have a relaxing bath or do some meditation seems like a complete waste of time. But if you don't do that, you can't physically go from busy, busy, busy stress zone into, oh yeah, great, I'm going to go to sleep now, because our brains just don't react like that. So it might seem like a waste, but actually what you're going to do by having that wind down time is make sure that you fall asleep quicker and that your sleep quality is better and you sleep more soundly.
So, a lot of times we joke around. I know we tell people there's only like 3 hours that you cannot get one of us in this business, right? Because you go to bed so late and I usually wake up early, but when we were talking to Dr. Browning, she actually mentioned that there's something in our genetic code that makes us predisposed to being this way.
Whether you're genetically predisposed to want to stay up late and wake up later in the morning, or if you're someone who likes to go to bed early and then you're awake at the crack of dawn. And there's a lot of research looking at which is better. And to be fair, we need both types of people. They were awake really early so that it kind of did natural shifts. It was the evolutionary way of doing the night shift or not. If you're someone who's a night owl, it means that you start to feel more alert, more awake. You're kind of feeling like you want to get into the nitty-gritty, important work stuff as the day goes on. Maybe even you might be working in the evening because you're on a roll, your brain's with it, so you keep going. And you might not want to stop work at 9, 10, 11 to go to bed because you're still working. And you might find that you go to bed at 1, 2 in the morning. But the trouble is, the way the world is geared up, just because you go to bed at 2 in the morning, if you still have to be up with the children going to school or up for work, you're going to miss out on sleep because you still have to get up at 6, 7 in the morning. There's a lot of health implications of that. So people who are night owls tend to get less sleep overall because the world is geared up for larks. So we do go to bed later, but we still have to get up at the same time as everyone else. And if we do sleep in later, we're branded as lazy because we didn't get up on time. What you are, you can't change from an owl to a lark or from a lark to an owl. You can't be someone who, if you naturally wake up first thing in the morning and you're raring to go, you're not going to be the last person dancing in the nightclub because you're just going to be tired a lot earlier. But the only thing we can do is work to our natural peaks. So if you're someone who wakes up really early, then it's a really good idea to go to work earlier, do the difficult tasks first thing in the morning, because that's when you're feeling really alert. If you are an owl, then having a really important board meeting at 8:30 in the morning is really not going to be fun because you're not going to be your best. So those people, if you have flexibility in your schedule, you can schedule difficult things when you have to be really on for later on in the day.
So, Nicolette, how much sleep do you think you need each night?
All of it.
All of it? What do you
All
mean?
the sleep in the world. No,
All
I need
24 hours.
I need 24 hours. No, I need probably a solid 7.5. I don't get it, but I need it.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's probably about 5 hours, but it's always been that. Actually, I think it's actually more now than it was like when I was a little bit younger. I think when I was younger, it was probably about 3.5 hours. Now I'm probably around 5 hours. Is like probably good. I feel good at 5 hours. So, but like I said, if I had my choice, I probably would sleep twice a day. Just saying.
Let's see what the experts say.
There's not going to be 3 hours, I'm telling you.
Statistically, based on loads of science, we think that for a working age adult, somewhere between 7 and 9 hours is what we're looking for. Although there is some debate that maybe it's more like 6 and 8, but currently the recommendations are that we should be getting somewhere between 7 and 9 hours regularly. And that means it's not the same as if you get 12 hours at the weekend and then you're getting 6 hours sleep during the week.
You can't double up.
You can't really catch up on sleep like that. So it's much better, much healthier to have the right amount of sleep every night than, feast and famine. But yeah, somewhere between 7 and 9. And what's really important about that is that you might be someone who needs 7 hours a night, or you might be someone who needs 9. And if you're trying to get 8 because you read somewhere that 8 is the perfect amount, if you only need 7 hours sleep and you're trying to get 8 every day, you don't need that much sleep, and you'll probably end up struggling to fall asleep. You might wake up too early and think, oh goodness, I've got a sleeping problem because it takes me an hour to fall asleep. But maybe that's because you don't need that much sleep. Or if you need 9 hours sleep, but you're only giving yourself 8 hours because you, again, think that's the right number, then you're going to be sleep deprived by an hour every day. So it's really, really important for you to look at how much sleep you need, because that's specific to you.
I'm going back to bed.
I'm going back to bed. I'm done.
Here's my book. I'm going to bed. That's it. That is it. People, you're probably watching this right now really late at night. Go to sleep.
Go to sleep. Get some rest.
Go to sleep. Even if it's the middle of the day, just go to sleep.
Tell your boss. No big deal.
Tell your boss. Forget it. If you're at work, just lay your head on your... We shouldn't be watching this anyway if you're at work. Lay your head on your desk. Lay your head on your desk.
But if you are driving while listening, do not go to sleep.
Yeah, don't go to sleep. If you're driving, stay awake. Stay awake. Do not go to sleep right now. Unless you're that truck driver, pull over, put your hammock under your truck, and you go to sleep. Okay, buddy? Make sure you're in a safe place, then go to sleep. in your hammock.
All right. Until next week, stay tuned for episode 5, which is going to be about leadership and the animal kingdom. That'll be a fun episode. You'll find out about why people become good leaders and what qualities we can actually take away from the animal kingdom to make us better leaders.
We got one question. Who made you king?
That's right.